Right then guys, here I am with a video talking about my impressions of F1 Manager. Not that F1 Manager, but this F1 Manager. F1 management games are the bread and butter of this channel, and I was excited to play this new one when it was announced back in December. But this isn't like any of the older F1 management games, which I personally think is a waste of potential. I do want to make it plain that I'm not hating this game just because it's a free-to-play app, or to be more specific, an always online, multiplayer only, free-to-play app. Hutch Games, who developed F1 Manager, make a number of decently well-made racing and driving games. That includes Top Drives, which is also a free, almost always online, strategy racing game with a random pack opening mechanic. It's made up of the same ingredients as F1 Manager, but is much better executed. Let me summarise the differences by saying this. I've played Top Drives for over 250 days and will definitely continue to do so, whereas with F1 Manager, I've played it for about a month, and I can't see any real reason to play it again. I've been playing F1 Manager since not long after it was released in only a handful of countries, none of which were the UK. But I downloaded an APK of the app and sideloaded it onto my phone. So most of the footage is from the beta version of the app, specifically version 0.47450. With that said, most of what I'm going to talk about still applies to the game now. The game has improved slightly since then, but the sort of issues which have been fixed aren't the ones I take the biggest issue with. I barely know where to start, but I guess I should address the point I made in the title of this video. The fact this game shouldn't be called F1 Manager. You don't negotiate for drivers or components like in Grand Prix Manager or EA's F1 Manager, nor is there any financial management like in Grand Prix World, nor any young driver academy or rule changes like in the Motorsport Manager mobile games, and nor are there any personnel to sign like in all of those games. A couple of years ago, a few F1 YouTubers were toying with the idea of a FIFA Ultimate Team type mode in F1 games. And that's what this is, F1 Ultimate Team. All 20 drivers are in the game and are either common, rare or epic, which determines their rarity. Each driver can only be obtained after unlocking the series they are in. So the cycle is to enter a series of races and win more than you lose, so you can earn enough flags to unlock the next series. Once you're in Series 2, you then win Series 2 crates for each race you win, making Series 1 defunct. Partially because once you reach the maximum level of flags you can in Series 1, you don't make any progress towards unlocking future series by racing in that one. But mainly, it's because you get less money for each race you win, and each crate you win will have fewer items in it. That's why still to this day I have a gold Series 4 crate unopened. I got it back in the days when Series 4 was the highest series I had unlocked. The problem with gold crates is that they take 8 hours to open. In that time I could almost open 3 standard Series 7 crates, which can contain any item from any series, whereas a Series 4 crate can only contain drivers or parts from Series 4 or below. A gold Series 7 crate is better than a gold Series 4 crate, again due to it potentially having any driver or part in it, but also it simply has more assets in it. So if it's not even worth my time to open a Series 4 crate, then why would I race in a lower series to try and earn one when I can race in a higher series and earn more money and get better rewards? To be fair, the GP events, or Grand Prix events as they're now called, aren't in the game yet, and they might change things. But as it stands, I would be worse off in every sense racing around Bahrain, Abu Dhabi or the USA than I would in Azerbaijan, Singapore or Monaco. So other than for fun, I would be foolish to race around 18 of the 21 tracks. What makes it worse is that, since the advert reward caps out at a Series 4 crate, and since you spend so much of your time early on winning low-end Series crates, you inevitably level up the lower Series drivers and parts more so than the higher Series drivers or parts. For example, Sebastian Vettel starts off as an amazing driver, much better than Stroll or Albon. But because he's a Series 6 driver, you can't possibly get him for ages, and by the time you can, you almost certainly won't. Even to this day, I still don't have him because of his epic rarity. I only have 2 epic drivers: Kimi Räikkönen, who I was lucky enough to win from a free platinum crate I got from winning a race, and Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton I went out of my way to get, not like I've ever used him or ever will. I got him from the asset store, which does slightly negate the rarity and crate specific part issues. The thing is though, is epic drivers used to cost 250 of the premium currency to buy. Now they cost 400, and I'm still not sure how to feel about it. Either way, I had just about earned $400, so was able to buy him for the brief time he was available. He was only level 1, and to get him halfway towards level 2 would have cost another $60. That's bad enough, but as I demonstrated with Albon, I spent $1 to get him 0.25% closer to level 8, and then the cost goes up to $2 for another 0.25%. Upgrade costs go up exponentially, and when it's such a small increase, or when the upgrade is so expensive as it is with Hamilton, the prices aren't even remotely justifiable. Both of the drivers I field are common in rarity, and 4 of the 6 parts I use are common as well. 2 of the parts are rare rarity, one of which I'll talk more about later on. The fact of the matter is that a high level common driver or part is almost always better than a medium level rare driver or part, or a low level epic driver or part. The only driver lineups I've ever used in the game are Stroll and Albon, then I ditched Albon for Giovinazzi, then I finally replaced Stroll with someone who developed to a higher skill level, which was Kvyat. So I had Giovinazzi and Kvyat for a long time until I eventually unlocked the highest skilled common driver in the game, Romain Grosjean. All of the drivers I've ever used are common rarity due to those either being the only ones I've ever had, or the only ones I've ever had at a high level. The highest series rare driver Kevin Magnussen I've had for a while, but as he's only level 3, he is arguably worse than Grosjean and Kvyat. Even Charles Leclerc, a rare driver who I've had for a while longer due to him being a Series 5 driver, not Series 7 like Magnussen. Even he is inferior to Grosjean and Kvyat. Also, the fact Leclerc is unlockable earlier than Magnussen explains why he is 1 level higher than the Dane. I seriously don't see myself ever replacing Grosjean or even Series 3 driver Kvyat, because they're both decently quick, both good in wet weather, Grosjean especially, and both have exceptional fuel and tyre management. Fuel and tyre management are crucial as far as I'm concerned, and certainly you need both. In the races, telling the drivers to either push or go slowly affects the fuel consumption and tyre wear. It's not like in the Motorsport Manager games where you can up the engine mode to burn through fuel, but simultaneously save the tyres. In this game, you either burn through both or conserve both. This is shown most prominently at Baku, where even with my drivers who are really light on their tyres, I still have to tell them to go slowly for the entire race, just so they can do 2 laps per set of softs. As a result, they ended the race with about 4 laps of fuel spare. The ridiculous tyre wear in Azerbaijan also means Baku is the only track where the hards are even vaguely usable, as on every other track they're so much slower than the softs that the extra endurance you get from them isn't worth the massive hit in performance. A good example of that is a Chinese Grand Prix I ran where me and my rival had near equal qualifying performance. My rival's Giovinazzi, who started on the hard tyres, lost ground instantly to my own Giovinazzi, who was on the softs, and very quickly he got up to third, even ahead of my rival's soft-tyred Albon. My opponent didn't learn, as later on he put Albon onto the hards, and so in the end I thrashed him just by staying on the softs for the whole race. In qualifying their drivers had the edge on mine, but come the end mine finished in 1st and 5th and scored way more points than theirs did. So the hard tyres are useless, except arguably in Baku. It certainly isn't clear cut, but the hards are worth considering there since the softs only last 2 laps. However, what Baku shows is that in this game, whilst the softs are preferable, stopping too many times just to use them isn't a viable plan either. My opponent's Sainz pitted on the 1st lap of an Azerbaijan Grand Prix, which is a good way to avoid double stacking your drivers, but if you're pitting on the 1st lap, you may as well give up. Sainz pitted 4 times in an 8-lap race and unsurprisingly finished down in 19th. To be fair, it's not a big surprise that he pitted 4 times, or maybe even had to pit after just 1 lap on the softs, because Sainz's tyre management stat is atrocious. It's so low he borders on useless, and it completely nullifies his good fuel management stat. If a driver doesn't have decent tyre management, then you can't afford to push them, and if you don't push them, then you can't turn up the wick on the engine to trade in the extra fuel for more power, meaning missed potential performance. In general, on all of the tracks, you want to avoid using the hards, yet pit as few times as possible. If you do that, then you're on to a winner. That is the best strategy for all the tracks, but it's also the only viable one for Monaco. I had a Monaco Grand Prix in which the win was closely fought and hinged on a battle between my Kvyat and opponent's Vettel. However, Vettel pitted on lap 3, then lap 7, as opposed to both of my drivers who only stopped once, which is a much better strategy even if it means double stacking your drivers and screwing over the second driver. Also, that's a good example of a top tier epic driver who is inferior to a lowly commoner, and even Hamilton isn't much better, as the starting grid for this Monaco Grand Prix shows. Lewis Hamilton was an amazing driver by the standards of the start of the game. Now he's brilliant if you can deal with the less than perfect, although thankfully near equal, fuel and tyre management stats. Given what we've seen with how useless the hard tyres are and how important it is to pit as few times as possible, I don't think Hamilton's slightly quicker pace makes up for his much worse conservation of rubber and fuel. But it is an unfair comparison because Hamilton is still level 1, whereas Kvyat is level 7 and Grosjean level 6. As we saw earlier, the cost of upgrading Hamilton or any epic driver or part is beyond ridiculous, but I don't think there's any other real option. I want Kimi Räikkönen with 3 of the 4 assets he needed to upgrade ages ago. Despite winning a couple of platinum crates since then, and even winning a couple of those stupidly expensive legendary crates from winning races, I have never got any more assets to upgrade Kimi. He is still at level 1 because it's incredibly expensive to buy any assets for him, and incredibly unlikely you'll ever win any. That's what makes the epic drivers and parts near useless. A level 1 Räikkönen or Hamilton is better than a level 1 Kvyat, but Kvyat, being a Series 3 common driver, is easy to unlock and can be done so much sooner than Räikkönen or Hamilton. It's also much easier to upgrade Kvyat than an epic driver since every crate has common assets in it. Only certain crates have epic assets in them, and even then you're not guaranteed to get assets for the driver or part you want. I am sure a level 6 Hamilton and Räikkönen combo would be much better than Kvyat and Grosjean. But by the time I get Kimi and Lewis to level 6, Daniel and Roman will probably be level 20, so the problem is never ending. Everything I've talked about for the past few minutes relates to the car parts as well as the drivers. The only major difference is that the car parts don't have tyre or fuel management stats, which complicates the driver situation. So 4 of the 6 parts I use on my car are common, but the SingStar gearbox is an interesting exception. I bought it from the asset store way back when the icons for the parts were different. It cost $30 due to its rarity, which is a bargain, especially since the prices have gone up a lot since the beta ended. What makes it so special is that it's the only Series 7 car part that isn't epic rarity. So because it's only rare, that means it's comparatively cheap, so I could and did buy it very early into my time playing the game. Having a Series 7 part from the start must have made the game easier for me. Well, certainly I won far more races than I lost, and I wouldn't claim to be good at the game. As long as you avoid the hard tyres like the plague and ensure you have drivers with good fuel and tyre management, you can't go too far wrong. Of course, I couldn't win any assets towards upgrading that Series 7 part until I got into Series 7 and started winning Series 7 crates. But that gearbox was the best gearbox I had by a mile early on, and it just so happens to still be the best gearbox I have. The problem is, the benefits I think that gearbox gave me over everyone else, along with the fact it's a free-to-play game with microtransactions and is an online-only game, means the game is pay to win. I've spent no money and done everything there is to do, so the idea of spending money on this game in its current state is moronic as far as I'm concerned. However, there will be those people who pile in loads of money into the game, buying loads of crates or waiting for the best drivers and parts to appear on the store and investing all of their bucks into them and buying an unstoppable team. The Man City approach. That's the problem with having a microtransaction laden game that's online only. Players who play for free or only invest a few quid will be slapped by those who pour tens or hundreds of pounds into the game, ruining the balance. I don't even consider that to be a major oversight given that it is part and parcel with this game design approach. I do think Hutch Games' top drives is less pay to win and more luck based, given how I've gotten cars like the Bugatti Chiron from a ceramic pack bought with in-game money I earned, and you can't buy a specific car in that game. On F1 Manager you can wait to buy a specific driver or part, which means it's less about luck and more about how much money you invest / how patient you are. Top Drives, I've heard, has more licensed cars than any other game in the world, even more so than Gran Turismo 6. It's got drag races, hill climbs, city street races where ground clearance matters, off-road courses, and much, much more. F1 Manager has 20 drivers and 48 car parts which you can pick and choose from the asset store. It's a no-brainer which game has the better longevity. Having said that, there is much more in-race interaction on F1 Manager than on Top Drives, and I also think F1 Manager is a graphically pleasing game, and once they allow you to split the rate of fuel and tyre usage, they'll have a solid in-race management system. Also, I love the fact the safety car can come out and completely change the face of a race. And yes, it can screw over the better player to make him lose, but honestly, I'll take the less predictable races over consistent fairness. The same can be said for car breakdowns, which, if you and an opponent come into the pit at the same time, but one of you has a smoking car, then that battle is over due to the roughly doubled pit stop time. I also like the changeable weather conditions, which again makes the races less predictable. It's a shame it is guaranteed to rain at some tracks and never at others, which does take the unpredictable aspect out of the racing. I've also never had a rain affected race at Monaco or Baku, which surely needs to be changed. Another part of the game I like is that all of the real life drivers and teams join in the races with you, and yes, they serve little purpose other than set dressing, but the game is better for them joining in the races than if it were just a 4-car showdown. This game is far from awful, but every other comparable game I can think of is better than it. Of course, more content can and probably will be added to this game, but there needs to be. I've done everything there is to do on it, whereas Top Drives I'm still playing because there's always new events to compete in and new cars to win. In an ideal world, they would make a new and proper F1 Manager game, not this F1 Ultimate Team always online distraction. Give PlaySport the F1 license so they can replicate the brilliant Motorsport Manager games, but with the official F1, F2 and F3 cars, teams and personnel. Even if it's a mobile game, I wouldn't care. What worries me is that they're busy making Motorsport Manager online, which is going to be truly comparable to F1 Manager. It might be better. I don't know, as it isn't on the UK Google Play Store yet, and whilst I could get the APK of the game like I did for F1 Manager, I'm not interested enough to bother. The dream F1 Manager game for me would combine the menus, music, driver and backroom staff negotiation system, in-race driver instructions, multiple racing classes and championships, as well as the rule changes from Motorsport Manager, mobile or PC, and the sponsor negotiations, partner negotiations and deals, R&D, testing, bank loans, share prices and financial management aspects from Grand Prix World. That would be one of my favourite games ever. I want to manage Williams and take them back to the top, all the while Hamilton moves to Renault and Vettel goes to Mercedes. I want a game where designers, technical directors and drivers all swap teams. I want Toro Rosso to get Ferrari engines and Mercedes to get Honda engines, as illogical as that would be. I want rule changes to come in and help make Sauber a race-winning team whilst dragging Ferrari and Mercedes down the order. It's the same reason I make the all seasons of career mode videos. I love just sitting back and watching the Formula 1 world do its own thing and watching just how far it can deviate from the real life season, even if I'm not really involved. Even with my reverse grid videos, or even just the TV modes in general from the Studio Liverpool F1 games, watching F1 teams and drivers handle ridiculous situations and seeing what happens and who comes out on top is what I love about those modes. I don't care if I have little personal involvement. But having an alive and ever-changing sporting world, along with a management aspect in games like Grand Prix Manager or Grand Prix World or any of the 4 Motorsport Manager games, is what makes them great. Even EA's F1 Manager, which is a horrendous depiction of the 1999 Formula 1 season and fails in many key ways that define a video game, including difficulty and playability. Even that is still a game I'd rather play than the new F1 Manager. Objectively, EA's F1 Manager is a 5 out of 10 game at most, due to the lack of realism, variety of weather and number of things to manage. But subjectively, it is one of my absolute favourite games. If you want to see the Formula 1 world unanimously do several lines of cocaine, then this is the game for you. It's nonsensical, hilarious, ludicrous, broken, but crucially, fun and way more replayable than the new F1 Manager app. One playthrough, Michael Schumacher joins McLaren and Hakkinen replaces him at Ferrari. The next, Schumacher stays at Ferrari, Irvine leaves and is replaced by a former EA employee, who then jumps Michael Schumacher off the line at his debut race, whilst Ron Dennis is losing all sanity and destroying McLaren by, most notably, parting ways with Mercedes and getting Ford engines instead. And all of that ignores the other 9 teams and the crazy shenanigans they get up to. The F1 Manager app is bound by the fact it's a free-to-play game, and it's bound by the fact it's online only, and it's potentially restricted by the licensing agreement they have with Formula 1 management. But those restrictions stop this game from being anywhere near as good as it could be. for everything this game does right, and there are a number of things it does do well. The problems it has make it inferior to games that don't even have the F1 license or are over 20 years old.